Okay, maybe, wait a minute, this guy might go out. Pilot might go out, KF, huh? Alright, I just thought I would share with you a couple of interesting things, or what I thought might be interesting, what I found out the past couple of days, trying to shoot some home videos, editing, practicing making some videos, some of the things that I learned. We're about a month and a half or so into this whole ECQ quarantine lockdown thing. Anyway, so here are some of the technical and not so technical things that I've been learning the past few weeks. Number one, I just found this out the last couple of days. I got into this whole rabbit hole of 24 versus 30 frames per second. It's funny because I wanted to get into 24 frames per second, not just because it's supposed to be more cinematic and everything, and that whole argument about, you know, it looks more natural and it's the kind of thing that we've been used to watching in movies our whole lives. The one that really got my attention, or the really big thumbs up that I really liked about 24 frames per second, you know, it eats up less space. The thing is though, as much as I want to stick with 24 frames per second, I realized that at 24 frames per second, you put it on a 24 frame per second timeline, that's great and everything, but what about all the other stuff that you put on top of it? 120 and 60 frames per second is not a problem, but the culprit, the bad apple really is the 30 frames per second of the phone. When I put the 30 frames per second of the phone on the 24 frame per second timeline, it sort of screws everything up. Not in terms of quality at the end of the day, but just the rendering time of the computer. It sometimes the computer doesn't even play whatever's on the phone on my playback. Of course it renders it eventually, but it takes a long time. So it really screws up this whole, you know, seamless, quick transition kind of workflow if you want to go. I guess what I'm saying here is if you're mixing up 24 frames per second from the SLR and then 30 frames per second from the iPhone, what I'm basically saying is, yeah, sure, you can use both of them, but maybe 80% of your base frame rate, which is 24 frames per second, which is probably what's going to happen with the SLR, and then maybe just 20% from the phone, because you don't want it to be like half. Whatever your footage mostly is going to be, let's say it's 30 frames per second, meaning it's shot on the phone, or 30 frames per second shot on the SLR. Whatever it is, 30 frames per second, it should be 30 frames per second timeline also. If it's 50-50 or even, it's not working out well for me. It's taking too long to render. I don't want to shoot in 30 frames per second on the SLR. It's a hey, don't play there if it's raining. Sorry, dude. The bulk of the footage is going to determine the kind of timeline that you're going to put everything on. The next thing that I'm kind of learning also, or relearning again, is that, you know, whatever you have in your mind is not, sometimes it's not as cool as as what it's going to be on. Yes, sir.
I went there.
Yes, you did. It's a little dirty there, KF, huh?
Don't worry, I'm used to the dirt.
Okay. I'm just worried about you hurting yourself. Baby, don't play with those wires there.
Okay,
Don't touch those wires there. I think another thing that's worth mentioning now is not so technical. It's really about the storytelling, where you don't want to be falling in love with the shots too much versus actually telling the story, which is a caveat of this second thing that I'm trying to talk about, which is non-technical thing, right? Is that you gotta know what the video is all about. You gotta know what the point of the video is all about. Can't just be like, oh, here's what happened throughout the day. It's like, yeah, so what? I mean, this is what happened throughout the day, but what's the point? Like, why am I watching this video? I'm sitting there watching my own video and I'm getting bored of my own video. So if I'm getting bored, you gotta be getting bored too. Somebody's gonna need to do some major showering later, huh?
Yeah.
It's alright. Get yourself dirty. I don't know if this is a caveat of that second one, or if this is number 3, or just letter A or letter B of that number 2. You gotta be brave. Not just brave you know, vlogging in front of other people, or your opinions brave. But brave in terms of when you're editing, you gotta be, when you're sort of writing the piece of paper, you're writing the essay, you got to make decisions. You got to make critical decisions. It's like, am I going to do this way and then go all the way, or not do that and go this way and go all the way there? You kind of can't go be like jumping back and forth between whatever the idea is, whether it's A, B, or C, which is right in the middle. You got to stand up straight about it. You got to, like, you know, stand up straight, stick your chest out, chin up kind of thing. I mean, you gotta be like brave, bold, and what's the word that I'm looking for? I mean, one of the things that they say is if you can say it in a shorter amount of time and with less number of words, not like what I'm doing now, if you can do everything with less words, less effects, less fluff, and get straight to the point, or show what that creative decision is exactly, go straight to that. Because the more you try to fluff everything up, the audience, I mean me, when I watch my own videos, I kind of get lost. Just try to let everything stand on its own without relying on all the other fluff around it.